Welcome back to the Startup Operator podcast. My guest today is Hari Ganapathy. Hari is the co-founder of Pick Your Trail, that is India's biggest DIY holiday booking platform. We're going to be talking to him about the nuances of creating a niche and building a brand in a very fragmented space like the travel industry. Hi Hari, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Roshan.
Yeah, I'm glad we could finally connect. Hari, before we get into the thick of things, why don't you just give us a brief about yourself? What led you to starting Pick Your Trail?
Sure. So, travel has always been a passion, right? And travel started very early on. Uh, Parents were government servants, so we had this LTA going. So, kind of predominantly, the standard pilgrimage kind of trips, but then still managed to make the most out of it. That way, got hooked on travel quite early. Also, because they were government servants, I had to shift multiple schools. So, like, lived in multiple places, right? I grew up in like 6 cities, and all of that put together left a very, very positive preference towards meeting new people, right? New cultures. And that kind of continued on. I would say I was lucky enough to kind of continue that. That moved into bike trips, that then moved into in campus as an exchange trip, and then from there on just continued, right? So I've been to about 36 odd countries. I've been fortunate enough to be able to do that. And basically a non-engineer, luckily, not that kind of background, a BSc in physics. I think I was very lucky to have done that, and I think it helps a lot. I think some bit of physics knowledge here and there. Uh, but apart from that, then did worked with Cognizant for a bit. Then my first ever travel experience was as a freelance German interpreter. This was way back, right after college, right? So it was fascinating to kind of be around people, try and translate, and then also get to experience, right, really nice properties because they stay in these really fancy properties. And then because you're a interpreter, you end up staying with them, right? So it was very, very like way above my paycheck kind of properties. So it's very interesting that way. I got to do my first ever houseboat, uh, thanks to them. But never did I ever realize or even imagine that I'll start something of new. First an entrepreneur, right? My brother did the standard, BE, MS in the US, right?
Right.
So the playbook was laid out. But I think I've been lucky enough to have met the right people at the right time. I did my MBA from IIM Bangalore. Post it was 2009, right? And the crisis kind of really, I was fascinated about marketing. I love to understand consumer behavior, what motivates people, choice, and all of that. And I was very clear about marketing. But unfortunately, that line was the worst year to graduate, right? But I still managed to get a marketing job with Britannia. And one thing led to the other, and suddenly I was at a startup called Immobile, and that was a revelation, right? I think the experience was insane. To kind of just see, I mean, I was India employee number 3 or 4 on the business side, right? To see that grow up to 100 people, right, was a fascinating, and the speed at which it grew, right? I think that adrenaline rush somehow hooked on. And yeah, I think I started Pick Your Trail with my co-founder Srinath. We go back way long, about 15, 16 years. Again, he likes traveling. So kind of very easy. We were on a Euro trip and then we said, okay, chalo, let's do something in the travel side. And it happened.
Fantastic. Yeah, and I should mention to our listeners that Hari is traveling at the moment as well, which is why you don't see this on video, right? I mean, pretty much every high flying executive sort of has this passion for travel or develops it and then, thinks that he or she is going to do something in the space, right? But translating that passion to a real business, I'm sure, that's not a trivial or an easy journey. How did you do it?
See, to be very honest, when we decided to do Pick Your Trail, me and Srinath, the only way we saw it was, hey, what will happen? Worst case in 2 years, right? If nothing works out, we would have built enough contacts in the travel trade for us to be having subsidized vacations for the rest of our lives. Right? Very objectively, that's how we approached it. That's the worst case, right? And we're going to continue to travel, right? So we said that's the opportunity cost trade-off, right? But little did we realize that we'll continue this for like this long. We've completed 7 years now, right? But I think after a point, uh, see, you start off, yes, very true. Passion was there, travel, very, very hooked on. right? And there was a genuine pain point, right? People at that point, a lot of my batchmates were getting married, right? Hey, they knew we've done our honeymoons abroad. Hey, how do you do it? Figuring it out, putting together a plan was not very easy. Sheets, multiple websites, right? So there was a pain point, like really a pain point. So that way, yes, passion was good, but I think luckily for us, people identified the pain point, right? Very early on, we used to charge people to share itineraries. We said, hey, you know what? It's like a consultant model. You pay us like $4,000 to get an itinerary, and people actually paid. Like they wouldn't know us. Initial circle, yes, network, fine. But then slowly word of mouth, people we would have never met. Right? Somebody in Pune, somebody in Nagpur, they'll transfer $4,000 and then we send the itinerary to them. Then we really saw that okay, people are willing to pay, right? And after that, I think of building a business, right? I think that's right. I mean, just keep trying new stuff, having your way. That somehow kind of hooked us on, and yeah, I think 7 years just whisked past.
Right. So, that brings us to a nice point where we can talk about Pick Your Trail specifically, right? So, for those of us who may not know that, what is Pick Your Trail? How is it unique? How do you stand out in this really fragmented travel industry?
Great. So I think to be like when we started Pick Your Trail, we were still figuring out. We actually started as a marketplace, 2013, 14 marketplace with the in thing, Myntra, Flipkart, Snapdeal, a bunch of them, right? And we said, hey, we'll be a marketplace for activities, something like a Klook or a Get Your Guide, but we focused on India as a market, right? So I think we kind of didn't get that product market fit right at that point in time. But along the journey, we realized putting to the entire trip was a pain, right? And that's when we said, hey, can we build a tech solution that makes it much more easy for people to have all the information at one spot, right? And then customize the trips real time instead of using Excel sheets, instead of WhatsApping or let's say emailing people. Can they like real time see what you see is what you get kind of a model, right? So you change, you remove nights, you add nights, you change activities. Can that in travel trade, it's called dynamic packaging, right? So, I mean, packages were being sold, packages still continue to be sold, right? Biggest holiday player, Thomas Cook, continues to get most of its revenue from fixed departures, right? But we said, can we do that as a platform and a product, and then see if that scales, right? So when we started out, our core value prop was for, hey, you could create, customize, and book all of the trips completely online, right? But then over the years, we have learned that hey, while completely online is great, but it's not a very trivial purchase. It's a honeymoon, it's an anniversary, it's a summer vacation, right? And the average ticket sizes are about $4,000, right? 2.5, 3 lakhs. So people are not going to just make that impulsive purchase, right? So the online piece helps in customization. Like for example, your local travel agent or Make My Trip or Thomas Cook, when they shut shop at 8, 9 p.m., right? Then you can't do anything. You can't do any changes to your plan. But you get updated, right? So that's where the technology solution really helped people. We saw huge spike in usage only after 9 p.m. Being go up to like 12 on the night. Customize, like get control of their trip, really their trip there. But at the same time, there's a consultative, apprehensions. And hey, you know what? Am I doing the right thing? What is the visa going to be like? Right. And things like that where they need those checks because it's a very high ticket size, that reassurance, if I may say, human comes into picture. Right. So if you see where we are today, the goal with Pick Your Trail is to be the most relevant leisure travel brand for the millennials. The millennials are the ones traveling, they're having the affordability, right? So how do we be relevant? And they don't want to associate themselves with like Make My Trip or Thomas Cook because it's completely constraining, right? So we want to be the leisure brand of choice for the million audience. That's what Pick Your Trail is. We understand the fact that you don't have time, you have unique preferences, you have Marriott points, right? You want to do a business upgrade. We understand what like, this audience is, and we've built solutions and products for that. Very simple. We have a concierge app, right? So like you don't want to have a tour manager with you, right? That's the audience. At the same time, they want to have somebody in case something goes wrong. Very simple. Your car gets, let's say, breakdown when you're self-driving in New Zealand. How do you quickly get in touch with people? Because that 15 days is the most precious time. You don't want troubleshooting, figuring out, getting someone to tow your car at that point in time, right? So we kind of understand the pulse, understand the needs of the audience, and have a solution across touch and tech, right? to ensure that experience is seamless, and thereby we're able to be relevant for the audience.
Interesting. This episode is brought to you by Mulya. You want to move fast? Sure. But without breaking things? Now that's a hard ask. The thing is, once you have some base of users and customers, you just cannot afford to risk quality. So how do the likes of Cred, Swiggy and Curefit, some of India's fastest growing startups, ship at lightning pace and delight their users and customers? Simple, they're working with Mulya as a strategic quality partner. Mulya is India's most talented and passionate community of testers. They've helped prevent thousands of bugs and regression issues. So, as a CTO or a product owner, if you want to reduce tech debt, especially while you scale, do check out Mulya.com. I've interviewed Mulya's founder and CEO Pradeep on the podcast earlier, and we spoke about how startups can improve quality while scaling and things to that effect. You should definitely check it out. I'll link to it in the description below. Now back to your regular programming. Yeah, I mean, some of the companies that are pretty hard nosed about being a technology player, and and pretty much expect that people will figure things out online itself, right? But yeah, it's good that you have this omni-channel approach and you're leveraging the human personal side of services as well, which I think is, as you mentioned, I mean, it is definitely reassuring, comforting. It is definitely important. So talk about the platform itself. You have to go and build the supply side as well as the demand. How do you go about doing that?
So very early on, we really did things that didn't scale, right? Me and Srinath used to make itineraries, right, in Excel. Both of us are not techies, right? So I still remember the first developer we interviewed. I kind of Googled questions to ask in an interview, right? And then the guy just walked out. He's, dude, you're wasting our time, right? So, I mean, very early on, first couple of years, a lot of stuff that didn't scale. We kind of did things on our own. But the beauty was that gave us so much understanding about the customer behavior, right? What ticked them, right? What worked, right? Simple things like, people want to have the first transfer, right, to be 100% right. Right? You have to dot all the I's and cross all the T's, because that defines the experience. When you land into a new country, you're not sure you're landing out, you need to have that transfer going right. So seeing that the first transfer going right and the last day having a highlight experience really changes the mood of the trip. If we get both of these right, some things in between going wrong, room's not right, somebody's delayed, all of that people forget, right? So we learn a lot of such stuff, which we then codify, right? Through checks or through product. So I think the first couple of years was a lot about understanding customers, how they operate, how they buy, higher ticket sizes, right? And also in that process, figuring out supply, right? Because supply in travel, it's a very low barrier to entry. So you'll see a lot of travel agents across neighborhoods, right? But the scale is the biggest barrier in travel, right? You can get to a good lifestyle business very easily, but for you to make real margins, right? If Make My Trip is making 7-8% on flights, local travelers will be making 2% on flights, right? Unless you get to that scale, it's very difficult to make money in travel, right? So low barrier to entry, but very, very difficult to get high margins unless you scale. So we did slow way, built, like we moved from offline booking, right, to eventually gold, platinum kind of tiers. And then we also built the product side by side, which meant like there was a Focusrite conference. Focusrite is a very popular travel conference that happens, and we were the runners up in the APAC segment. That was a great moment because then we could meet all the big Expedias, Agodas of the world, right, and then get API partnerships up and running. So I think it took us a while, but the fact that we continue to be focused on technology, trying to see how do we solve, right, how to the efficiencies are much higher. And also what happens when you use technology is that the customer experiences can be standardized to a large level, right? You remove the human equation out of it. So I think that kind of helped us give a consistent experience to customers, which gave us a lot of repeat and referrals, which kept our CACs down when we were bootstrapping early on. And then kind of one led to the other for us to grow.
Right. Uh, no, we also, discussed that it's a very fragmented, crowded space, right? Travel as such. I mean, there are plenty of operators. I mean, both online, offline, and hybrid as well. Standing out in this crowded space is not a trivial thing. Do you bring your branding experience from the Britannia days to fore? What are some tips and tricks that you would suggest to our audience who would like to know, how do you stand out in a fragmented space?
So I think in very unorganized markets, right, better off building a niche and then building on top of it. For example, we do only outbound pre-COVID. We were only outbound focused. A lot of advice we got when we met people, investors, right, our own customers, right, like start doing domestic. But we're very clear, domestic was not tech enabled. Even today, if you want to book a room in Darjeeling or like, it's not availability is not real time, right?
Mm.
Then it becomes very ops heavy, right? So we said no, while the market is great, but we don't want to do it, right? One was that. And I think when we started off with international, it became very easy. We became very, very strong in Europe and Australia, New Zealand. So what is called long haul markets, right? And so within international, we were very, very well known for long haul. That gave us a lot of intent. Hey, these guys, for example, our visa success ratio in Schengen is about 98%, right? Then that became a lever for top of the funnel. People came to us saying, you know what, these guys do phenomenal visa. People have got visas rejected. I'm going on my honeymoon. I don't want to take a risk. I'll go with them, right? So we started out there. And once you're able to build that, right, the audience then say, you know what, can you do Dubai also? Can you do Singapore also, right? And at that point, you don't want to be selling at the cheapest price. India
Right.
continues to be value conscious, right? But because he's seen your service, right, and that spectacular or like hassle-free experience, he's okay paying like let's say $5,000 or $3,000 extra on a trip if their experience continues to be great, right? So we were able to expand into other smaller markets, what is called short haul, right? And then there also like the product also was built slowly for short haul also. So I think picking up a smaller niche, right? I mean, I continue to tell my team, like if you take South India, the economy is going to be as big as Germany, right? So India is multiple countries baked into one, right? Obviously, you could build a significantly big brand for India, but it also takes significant dollars, right? If you're unable to attract significant dollars, continue to build in your niche, right? And you can still become a easy 1,000 crore brand, right? Over time, if you continue to do the right things, which
Right.
is not an easy task.
Right. So the ecosystem that you operate in, right, as you rightly mentioned, it's very unorganized, way too many people, different priorities, etc. How do you manage that ecosystem, and considering that there is a significant upside to this business as well, how do you go about that?
So on the supply side, it is very important we curate supply, right? Because, for example, somebody giving a cheaper transfer by $5, right? But he may not come on time, right? Then the customer experience goes for a toss. It's a very, very delicate thing because, see, the unfortunate thing about travel is that, right? Unlike your other, let's say, for example, Swiggy, right? You order now in 40 minutes, you get the experience done, right? In 40 minutes, you can make a decision on the experience and the overall quality, right? Right from order to food being delivered. But in
Yeah.
travel, especially outbound, your booking to departure is like a good 60, 75 days ahead, right?
Hmm.
So you're trying to haggle for price when you're booking. You're trying to optimize cost, right? But then your in-trip experience starts 2 months away.
Right.
And then you won't remember that, hey, I haggled for price. You're still going to own up saying, you know what, no, it is not fair. You gave me a much smaller hotel room. I expect something bigger, right? So I mean that is a huge challenge for us to educate customers, right? And also ensuring the supply quality was not ever compromised. So I think early on we made some tough calls that we will not go with subpar supply. Even if we lose some customers, it's okay. But the customers who
Hmm.
stuck with us continue to come back to us. So our like 25-month repeat cohort is about 33%, right? So we're able to ensure that people who come back, they have a good experience and they start referring. And over
Right.
time, the beauty is when you start doing economies of scale, you start getting better pricing, which
Hmm.
with which you can then capture the larger market also. The guys who came
Right.
and went back will now start finding you competitive, but at a higher supply quality. Right. So I think early on we had to say no to a lot of people, but that kind of gave us that time to get the supplier piece right.
Right. Yeah. So one other thing that's extremely critical for your business is also to make customer experience consistent and predictable, right? I'm sure that there are various facets to that you have to streamline, because the world that we live in, the Airbnb sort of a world, right? One bad customer experience could result in a lot of pain, right? How do you bring all of these various elements together and streamline that experience?
So we had something called the customer happiness team, right? Whose fundamental job used to be, like I said, the concierge. We started with WhatsApp concierge, and we used Telegram like 3 years back, right? And in fact, one of the customers joked that Telegram is our own app at that point in time, right? So we said, hey, we will do real time concierge, so that I think in any service business, right, there will be a break in service. And one of the best things I learned from one of my mentors was that, hey, like, don't chase like fanatically obsessive that it has to be 100% right. In service, things will break, right? But what you have control is how do you respond to that break, right? If you're able to respond in the best possible way, you can still win the customer back. We have seen that
Yeah.
happen time and again in Picture Trail, right? I mean, there will be some screw up. Like you're going in peak Christmas in Dubai, there will be screw up, guaranteed, right? I mean, everybody is running chock a block. People are contracting drivers. People suddenly become part-time like transfer drivers. They're not going to be the same professionals as the normal guys, right? It will break.
Yeah.
But what do you do, right, after when it breaks, right? Be it refund, be it a room upgrade, right? Be it just sometimes just listening to them, hearing them out, right? Is what people want also sometimes, right? So I
Yeah.
think building that team, driving this ethos of customer happiness. So for example, one part of a variable payout for the entire organization rests on the customer happiness score, right, for the quarter. So, I mean, driving that obsession very, very deep down. And everybody who comes in is be very clearly told, right? People save up to take Indians travel like abroad once 15 months, right? They save, and it's a highlight moment, right? We have no right to screw it up because of
Mm.
our oversight, right? I mean, I forgot to do this, I forgot to do that. That's not fair, right? So we kind of instill that ethos internally as a culture, number one. Number two, supply kind of like I spoke about, ensuring supplies of highest quality, right? Number three is the app, the concierge, which started offline, eventually now moves to the app, right? And the fourth is that if it breaks and when it breaks, how do we respond better, right? And that is, I don't know, is a beautiful one case study that impacted me is the SAS case study
Mhm.
where they decentralize decision making. So, I mean, if you fly, right, one of the biggest pain points for you is when the flight is delayed, the person in the gate will not know anything. And it's very irritating.
Yeah.
You'll go ask them what happened to the flight. They will say, I
Yeah.
don't know, please wait, please wait. Imagine if that, so SAS decentralized decision making for that person to be able to take that call saying, okay, sir, it's delayed. Here's a meal voucher, right? Go have coffee, right? So, I mean, that's what we've tried doing. Yes, it's not people with great experience who are the front line taking pings at 3 a.m. in the morning. But how do we empower them with dollars? Saying, hey, you will do the right thing. Somebody wanted a sedan, right? He didn't get a sedan when he was self-driving. Can you upgrade him to a coupe, right? Go for it.
Mm.
But then getting the culture right? I think yes, we made mistakes. I mean, obviously it's a very difficult balance, but we err more on the side of customer happiness, and that's worked out in building this brand.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I was reading this book, Alchemy by Rory Sutherland, which I recommend very highly. And, there he mentions as well that customers who've had some sort of a service disruption and then had that resolved in a very nice way have a higher NPS than customers who did not have any service disruptions. So, yeah, so that emphasis on, resolving that and also understanding that these things happen, I think that's amazing. That's amazing. So, let's talk about your customer acquisition. A lot of the acquisition and travel industry is driven by performance marketing, right? I mean, you pay for ads and you just figure the funnel, you optimize that, and so on. What does your customer acquisition look like? What are some things that you do?
So we've been very lucky in that aspect because thanks to our NPS and good customer experience, almost 45% of our business is repeat and referral, right? So we managed to kind of keep our CACs down. Apart from that, pre-COVID, we used to focus on paid, obviously, right? Both social and search, right? There's no running away. So I think paid really helps you scale faster, right? Because you're able to, at the turn of a tap, get inquiries, right? But in a space like a vacation, right, which is a lot more, your involvement is very high. It's okay to have that, because then if you have a good experience, the customer is going to refer or is going to come back to you, right? Classic case, you have your honeymoon, then your sisters, right, or your wife's brothers, it just keeps moving on, right? So in this case, if you're able to keep, that's why we focus a lot on customer experience. If that continues to be a very, very high, right, and in an industry like ours where the bar is really low, right, it's fine, right? So I mean, it's like Amex, the credit card experience is phenomenal, right? So
Yeah.
if we're able to do that, I mean, we're able to afford high CACs. But the good thing is we are always unit economics positive on each transaction, right? So because let's say travel is about a 10% broad market on $4,000, you make $400, right? Then you still have $100 that you could do as CAC and still break even on that transaction.
Right.
And then even
Right.
if he refers one more person, right, then your CAC kind of comes down by half.
Yeah. No, that's damn interesting actually, because I think people tend to overly optimize on the top of the funnel, right? In terms of getting the copy right and getting the pricing right and everything else. The real low hanging fruit is the fact that this one customer can might as well refer like four other people and can come back for a repeat purchase, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think you're seeing that happen. And I mean, people talk about building communities that you see, right? Because everybody knows that, oh, like trying to get audience on Google and Facebook is great, right? But it's not
Yeah.
yours, right? After a point. So how do you end up
Yeah.
building a community, end up building some kind of owned audience? And luckily for us, we have that 75 days. While it is a disadvantage in other cases, right? We have 75 days to leave a good impression consistently. Visa experience is great. Then he's going to talk about, hey, I did my visa, it's great. This guy is the good. So every time we give him a phenomenal experience, payment did well, right? We reminded him very, very nicely for the payment. So every touch point of ours, from the booking till departure, is an opportunity for me to do a word of mouth, right? So how do I ensure that experience continues to be great, not just on trip,
Right.
even before?
Right. Right. So, you briefly talked about it earlier that, you cater to millennials, especially, right? Let's take a step back and look at, how the audience itself has changed, how the consumer has changed. In your opinion, what are some key trends in terms of, how the Indian traveler has changed in all of these years?
So I think on the millennial side, clearly, uh, people are getting a lot more experiential, right? So it's, yes, people still want to see the value for money is not, it will change, but it won't change drastically. But within that, they want to have very good experiences and not just tick stuff off, right? So if time we started to now, I'll give you classic Europe as an example, right? Standard Paris, Italy, Switzerland kind of itineraries, 2014 to now, where people start off saying, I want to go to, let's say, World War II, right? So take us to, Krakow, Poland, right? Warsaw, all those places, right? So, I mean, a lot more experiential sports is just taken off the roof, right? People watching football, right? People watching cricket, right? People traveling for that, Wimbledon, all of that has significantly changed, and a lot of this is being driven by
Right.
millennials, right? So I think clearly they've travel travel. I think till some time back was a discretionary spend, right? But I think now for millennials it's an essential spend, right?
Right.
In your budgeting, there is travel always factored in, right? And not just once a year outbound, but once a year outbound, one quick getaway to Krabi, one couple of getaways to somewhere within India, a drive down staycation. I think travel has become a very integral part, right,
Right.
of the millennial audience. That's a significant shift just in the last 6-7 years we've been doing this.
Right. So, one obvious way that you could sort of tailor your product is to have more of these kind of experiences, right? So maybe, skip the Eiffel Tower and Louvre sort of experience and, aggregate more of these, let's say, football experiences or whatever, right? Some more niche and experiential places. What are some other ways this impacts your product itself?
I think one of the ways is basically to even get the supply, right. I mean, it's not easy to get this kind of supply. Like I was saying, one of the things we were doing was to get the World Cup T20. We became a sponsor for the ICC World Cup T20 because we realized that while the product could be built, tickets to these kind of sporting events is not easily available. It's still
Right.
offline, right? So we had to do those kind of contracting, right? Where we had to pre-buy and commit and stuff like that. So we were doing some of that, right? On the sports tourism side, see, the algorithm is very simple for us because we have built the routing algorithm. You give any number of cities, it'll give you the most easiest way, right? And the fastest way to kind of route them. And then the APIs will power the flights, trains, hotels. So that's the most easiest part. That's what makes a product scalable, right? But then fulfilling them, right? For example, if you're going to Tomatina, right?
Hmm.
I mean, how do you ensure that you get tickets to Bunyol, right? Some of them could be offline. How do you ensure availability which offline? So then those kind of things are slightly challenging, number one. And if it's a lot more experiential stuff, like for example, gaming in Africa, right? Where it then a lot of knowledge is needed. Then we end
Right.
up traveling to those places, right? For example, we went to Japan, me and Srinath, just to understand Japan as a market because it was very difficult to understand Japan sitting here in India, right? So we did a good like a 10-day recce, right? Perks of traveling on work, right? So and
Right.
then we kind of understood the market. We're able to come back and do a much better product for Japan. So sometimes visiting the local market also helps, right?
Mhm.
Or you have to get supply right. So it's a mix of these.
Right. That's very interesting, and certainly a perk of the work that you do, right?
Yeah.
We have to talk about 2020, right? Because that disrupted everything, but more so, I mean, the space in which you operate. Travel came to a halt. People weren't really stepping out of their homes, and so on. So, I mean, I imagine that your business would have taken a really severe hit when this whole thing transpired, right? So, how did you respond to this?
I mean, it was baptism by fire in some sense. And I mean, we were not prepared for this, right? We
Right.
were on a growth trajectory. Things were looking really good. I mean, we were a couple of crores away from being, profitable. We were chasing that, and there were other conversations for the next round, right? So standard stuff, right? Growing well, the team's doing good, product is there, and then
Right.
boom. I mean, I still remember March, early March, late Feb. The team missed the Feb targets, right? And we were
Mm.
debating, hey, what Feb targets we missed, like by a good 20%, right? Generally,
Mm.
it doesn't miss by so much. We were like, no, it could be a one-off. Let's figure out what's happening. It's anyway still only in China right now. We'll see what happens. And then boom, like March, we just were blown off the first week, right? Europe contracted it. So I think it kind of totally tanked revenues, right? And then we were really caught like in a very very difficult position, right? Because we had hired people who were going to join us in May as part of the growth, right? And there was a huge bunch of, I mean, we were supposed to be very very like moving from 50% increase in headcount, right? So we had to go back, and we've not done this before at all, right? I mean, luckily we've just been growing, good things happening. So a lot
Mhm.
of personal entrepreneurial lessons there, right? In terms of how to work with people, how to manage people, and how to kind of go back and say no to offers. And then at the same time, also get a grip on, overall what happened to the cancellations, right? Because the world just like went zero. Everybody just shut, right?
Right.
And cancellations was completely offline. In travel,
Mm.
it still continues to be, right? There's no online product to it, right? So the entire exercise was a mess in terms of getting people right, getting our own mental, and then investors were obviously also equally worried. But
Mm.
I think one of the best things was that have happened all the three aspects of a business, right? Which is customers, stakeholders, and employees. All the three of them helped us out, right? Customers understood saying, what, okay, we gave an option to customers saying, hey, your money is safe with us. You can either take all the money once it starts coming back, or take a 5% or a 10% and take an extra credit as PYD vouchers, right?
Right.
So some customers kind of cooperated with that, right? Our investors really kind of say, what, nothing wrong with you. You can't really plan for these things. We will back you, right?
Mm.
Just keep continuing to do what you're doing, but do what's right for the business. And the team really through, right? I mean, we had to go through pay cards, right? Not for like a couple of months, for very extended periods of time, right? And they still stuck with us. They kind of believed in the mission. And that's the time you really realize it. I mean, people want purpose, right? While paychecks are also important, a larger purpose really beats a lot of that. And we were very lucky. The team that's kind of stood through this, I mean, that's a team that's really amazing. A lot of mental pressure.
Right.
right? And you see your own peers moving jobs, right? I mean, very, very different.
Hmm. Yeah. No, these are times, I mean, especially in a crisis when culture comes to fore, right? And you kind of realize the value of the kind of stakeholders that you have, really, whether those are employees, investors, and so on. And that's something that has struck out in literally every conversation that I've had with founders. So yeah. And, I mean, it's the vaccine is here and it's 2021. Things are looking a little more optimistic, right? How has the service industry recovered since then, and how are you looking forward to in terms of the future plan, and what growth you have to aspire for, and so on?
I think if it's two words, it's all hail Maldives. Right? I think Maldives is really kind of given the best kind of
Yeah.
antidote, right? Everybody, I mean, trust me, I mean, 7 years, yes, might not be great time, but we've seen Maldives and now we see families go to Maldives. It's a
Yeah.
first, right? We see old people go to Maldives. It's a first again, right? I mean, people are so damn like, just let us out. I think that way outbound Maldives is just led the charge. But
Hmm.
I think the unlock setting in staycations became a huge. So we kind of did a bold bet to say, hey, you know what, we've not done domestic at all, but a large part of our audience, millennial audience, right, disposable income, will want to be the first ones to get out of their homes, right? And then the only properties they might choose are like very well rated, safe properties. So we went on contracted 4 5 star properties around metros in India, right? And we managed to kind of get that staycations piece right. That helped us really grow. And the other thing that we did was to also build our partnerships, right? So we really kind of doubled down on the partnership side, uh, which was not the case pre-COVID, right? And that's helping us right now because now, especially on the domestic side, we've kind of signed up partnerships where there's a very strong TG match, which is again adding to top of the funnel and conversions. So I think some of the bets that we took during COVID, I still remember March, April, and we're discussing, hey, should we really get into this space? We've never done contracting in India. We don't know how it works. But then we took the leap of faith and staycations is doing well. The other thing that also did was we went global. It's
Mm.
always part of the roadmap, right? I've always wanted global because product by default is global. The room in
Right.
Paris is the same, irrespective of nationality, right? The rates, everything, right? It just that COVID gave us that breathing space to kind of get everything right, get the product tweaks right, get content right. The routing
Mm.
algorithm that we slightly tweaked because the Indian going into Europe was somebody in US going to Europe will be different, right? So we got time for that. And we're already seeing Dubai as a market is opened up really well for us right now.
Right.
US is still not there because it's still going through its own COVID phase, but Dubai as a market is opened well. So I mean, now the new business that we have started contribute almost 40% of top line for us, right?
Right.
Which is kind of very good for us. I think the worst, to answer your question very specifically, the worst I think is broadly over. Like you rightly
Mm.
said, vaccines are out. Generally, people itself they've kind of come to terms with it, right?
Right.
And people are finding their own safety parameters, right?
Mm.
What is safety for me, and they're operating within it, right? I think you'll see our own parents they start going to temples, they want to go out like satsangs, and I mean across age groups, people are slowly now venturing out, and I think the millennials more so than before because they've also been working remotely, right? That's
Yeah.
very telling on you, right? So I
Right.
think that's also adding to that overall. Hey, let us free, and I think in the second half of 2021 we're going to see a surge. Like it's the best time to start a travel company, if you ask me. But I mean, people will just travel left, right, center, right? I mean, you
Right.
will see huge boom over the next from June till about next year end, December 2022. I
Yeah.
think there'll be a significant flush of travelers.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the other thing that I've found common among all of the founders and startups that I talk to or hear about as well, which is the new business development and new product development, right? I mean, has just taken off like crazy, quite by necessity, actually, right? So you mentioned staycations and so on, right? And what do you see as permanent changes for your industry, for your space going forward, and broadly in the B2C space?
I think on the B2C space, I hope I'm just hoping optimistically, right? People will start valuing hygiene, safety, advice a lot more, right? From a value conscious perspective to a little bit more like an advisory model, right? I don't know if you've been following the fintech side. Some fintech companies are moving to a pure advisory fee based model, right? Which was
Right.
unimaginable, let's say 2-3 years back, right? They used to make money only on the transaction side, right?
Transactions.
So I think
Yeah.
largely B2C side, there is an emerging set of audience that is willing to pay a fee, right? And that is a very, very welcome change, especially on the service side. Number one, uh, specifically to travel, if you see, I think people have realized that, hey, it's okay to take a break from work,
Mm.
right? If you look at it, I mean, it'd be very surprising. One of the highlight points of working at Pick Your Trail used to be that they could just take leave and go travel, right?
Mm.
And we used to see that in our honeymooners, right? They will be like, no, I only have 5 days leave. I only have 4 days leave sanctioned, right? I think I'm hoping that's a permanent change with remote people taking staycations, people learning to work remotely, right? The mutual trust in the organization has significantly increased, right?
Yeah.
At least some
Great
part
point.
of the educated class, right? So I then see that helping people travel a lot more, take shorter breaks, which will, yes, leave the travel industry is surely going to get benefited, but from an overall wellness perspective, right? Overall society, I think that's a great benefit for people, because if you see, I mean, Australians, Europeans, they have very, very strong work life, right?
Mm.
And I think that we'll hopefully see as a change that has happened. Second thing, I think apart from that, on the travel side, yes, I mean, I hope this will push infrastructure development. I mean, you look at this Valentine's Day weekend, for instance, right? Every property around Bangalore is sold out. Coorg, Kabini, Madikere,
Yeah.
anything, like even places as far till Gokarna are sold out, right?
Yeah.
I mean, India needs more hotels, more good boutique hotels, like 30, 40, 50 room hotels. It's a great opportunity for entrepreneurs there, right?
Yeah.
While Oyo is going after a different kind of a market, there is this millennial willingness to pay, right? Give me a great experience. Don't obscenely charge me, but give me a good I'm willing to pay. I'm hoping that that will kind of kick off around not just Bangalore, Shimla, Chandigarh, like Chennai, everywhere, right?
Yeah.
Hyderabad, if you see, really lacks good drivecations, right? So I think
Right.
that's a change we're hoping that'll lay the foundation for domestic in the next decade for us.
Right. Fantastic. That's a very optimistic note to end the podcast on. I know that it wasn't easy to put this together, but totally worth it. Thank you so much, Hari, for your time. And these were some really fascinating insights that I'm sure that our listeners would benefit from as well. So thank you again for appearing on the podcast.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. Sorry, we've had some patchy networks here and there, but amazing, Roshan. Thanks a lot. Enjoyed sharing our story. Have a great weekend.
Yeah. You too. Really enjoyed this conversation. Bye-bye. Thank you so much for listening. If you liked this episode, then don't forget to subscribe to us on your favorite platform and share this episode with all of your fellow startup operators. Also, follow the Startup Operator on LinkedIn and Twitter for more updates. Stay safe, take care, and see you soon on a brand new episode of the Startup Operator.